Okay, so welcome to Career Lab. Today we have our two guests are from Senator Bernie Sanders' office, and they're going to talk to us a little bit about their work that they do both in Vermont and in DC, Katarina and Michaela. So let's start off maybe by just, if you guys could talk a little bit about your education and maybe how you came upon these jobs, and maybe a little bit more. I kind of gave them a general overview of your job, the written description you gave me, but a little bit more about what you do for Senator Bernie Sanders.
Okay. You want to start?
Sure. So I'm Michaela Yarnell. I grew up in Colchester, Vermont, and I went to UVM. I got a bachelor's degree in global studies. And after I graduated, I moved to DC because I was interested in politics and I wanted to, experience it firsthand and see if it's what I wanted to do with my career. So I interned in Senator Sanders' office. Senator Sanders takes about four to five interns each session. They have a fall session, a spring session, and a summer session. And as an intern, you answer the phones. People will call the DC office, have questions about how the senator feels about different issues, and you talk to them, explain the senator's position. You sort mail. You give tours of the Capitol. You do other research projects for staff, do other things to support the office. I loved my internship. And I was lucky enough there was an entry-level job opening in the office right when my internship ended, and I got that position. That position is called a staff assistant. So sort of self-explanatory, you assist the rest of the staff. So you do a lot of administrative work, you answer phones, and then you also, the staff as a whole, the senator recognizes the obviously of other interests than just helping the office run. So I had the opportunity to work on some research projects and interact with Vermonters during that position. And I held that position for about a year, and then another position in the office opened up. My current one is legislative aid, and I work on health and aging policy. So that includes the health realm. It includes primary health care, dental health care, mental health. Do a lot of work on the substance abuse, problems, heroin addiction, prescription drug use. The aging realm, I work on different issues that affect seniors in Vermont and across the country. Different health insurance issues, things like that, hunger, nutrition. And my day-to-day, what I like most about my job is that every day is very different. One day I could be taking several meetings with different folks from Vermont who have come to DC to update us on what they've been working on, either folks from, say, community health centers in different areas of Vermont, or someone who works at what we call area agencies on aging that help coordinate programs to support seniors in Vermont. They'll come down to DC, talk through different bills that are moving through the Congress that they want the senator to sponsor, or at least just bringing them to our attention. I go to different briefings around the Hill, as I call it, Capitol Hill. Holds a lot of different information sessions for staff to learn about different issues. So you see I cover a lot of different things. So, from my education, I didn't study any of that formally, so I had the opportunity to go to a lot of different seminars and briefings and things to help me learn more about what's going on. I'm sure you guys know everything changes so quickly in politics, so it's good to have the opportunity to have those resources. Happy to take any questions.
So you were talking about answering phones, and I know that I've seen commercials that say, like, if you disagree with this, like, call your senator and talk to them. Yeah. How many, like, poorly informed people have called you? Just, like, how many calls have you had to take that are like that?
Yeah, don't know if people are poorly informed, but it's hard to keep track of everything that's going on.
Like
and
strong people with like really strong opinions.
Sure,
That you have to,
most
like,
people
spend hours on. Just
we get so many calls in the office that unfortunately we can't devote more than usually 5 to 10 minutes to a single caller. Usually the calls that we get are, hey, this is so-and-so from whatever town in Vermont or somewhere in a different place in the country. And they ask, how does Bernie feel about X issue? How does he feel about, free college tuition? How does he feel about health care? Or a certain bill, a bill that was just moving through Congress a couple weeks ago was the GMO labeling bill. And Vermont was obviously the first state to pass that, so a lot of folks all across the country were calling our office to ask us about it. So usually it's pretty simple yes or no questions, or sometimes if the senator said something in the news, they'll ask the following up on that, and they'll have questions on that. Some people are pretty intense. If they disagree with Bernie, they let it be known, and it can be challenging to be yelled at over the phone. But yeah, it is really great learning experience. For me, I wasn't very good at talking on the phone even before I had the job. But no, now you learn how to, if a person calls and they're really upset. I don't know if you're aware, but the senator used to be the chairman or the head of a committee in the Senate that handled Veterans Affairs. So we would get a lot of calls from veterans who they weren't getting their health care benefits or were having some other trouble. So and or other people who were having trouble with their health care, education, or things that are really intense, and people can obviously get very easily upset about those things, as they should. So you learn over the course of your time on the phones how to deal with those people, how to calm them down, how to direct them to the right people to get help. So yeah, in that case, every call is different. A lot of you hone in your problem-solving skills really well.
So I work at the senator's state office in Burlington, and it's my job to, I'm on his outreach staff, and it's my job to meet with people about issues they're concerned about. I cover specific women, children, family, senior, and education issues. So I'll meet with groups, I'll go to events, things very similar to this today, to hear Vermonters' concerns so that Bernie can best represent Vermonters in Washington, because that's what he's been elected to do. How did I get there? I went to Harwood, and I'm from Warren, Vermont. And then after Harwood, I went to St. Mike's. I think I majored in political science and have the pre-med prerequisites. And then I graduated and didn't have a job, I think like a lot of people. And I landscaped. And then I worked in an office in the Mad River Valley, and then landscaped again, and then worked in childcare, and then a job posting for staff assistant at Bernie's office was in the free magazine 7 Days, and I applied. I got the job, and I was a staff assistant for about a year and a half, and then transitioned to this outreach role. So just like Michaela, as a staff assistant, I answered phones. The state office is different than the DC office. DC focuses on legislation, like Michaela said, but the state office, there are other duties that a Senate office can have. So we have an outreach team, like I said, so that we can hear from Vermonters, and then we also have a casework team. Every Senate office has the option of having a casework team, and to whatever degree however small or big they want to have it. A caseworker at a Senate office helps a constituent, someone from the state with the issue that they're having with a federal agency. So we get a lot of cases about like Social Security, VA benefits, like Michaela was saying, any federal agency, the IRS, immigration cases. So as a staff assistant, I'd intake the cases too, because when someone calls the office, we want to get their information as quickly as possible, so then we can start the case as quickly as possible. So I worked on that. Again, making people got to the right places. We got less calls about legislation. We'd still get them. But usually that number on the commercial is the DC office, because that's what they're working on. So I had that background to help me with this outreach role, so that I can give people the right resources as soon as possible if I'm talking to them in a community or event setting.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks. So what questions do you guys have? This is,
I have one. So you guys both said you talk on the phones and answer questions, and I'm not good at talking on phones. I have a fear of talking on phones, even though I'm fine talking to people in person, which is weird. But do you need to know, because obviously there's going to be a million different questions that people can ask. So do you need to just have the knowledge, or do you have like a little packet of stuff you're going through, facts, like, oh, actually he likes this and it would actually do this and this and this, like, or do you just need to know? I mean, obviously that would be better. That would be preferred.
And it's hard to know everything. Right. The way the office is set up, you have your computer in front of you when you answer a phone. So we have resources that are open to us, and we can quickly either Google something, or certain resource from the Senate, you can look up a certain bill and see how he voted on it. Or people will often reference news articles, or if he was on TV or CNN or MSNBC or something, you could bring up that. If you don't remember quite what he said, you bring up that interview and oh yes, okay, he meant this. And I think after doing that for a little while, you get similar questions over and over again. So you learn your response for a certain question. I think for us growing up in Vermont and always being very familiar with Bernie, and Bernie's been saying similar things for the past 30 years, which is great. He's very consistent. So I think for me it was always sort of honed in, but there are a lot of resources open to us. Our job is to learn.
And I'd just add to that, usually there's one or two big issues at a time. Yes, you'll get other calls about other things, but like Michaela mentioned, the GMO labeling, whenever issues about guns come up, we get tons of calls. So when something big is happening, usually we have the legislative staff or someone work on the 2 sentences that you'd say on the phone. Just because, if we know we're going to get a volume of calls about it, we can prepare. Right. If we don't know, we can't prepare, and then we kind of deal with the resources that we have.
And we do have the legislative staff and they're experts in the office. You put someone on hold and you run back and ask, hey, I just want to make sure, because you don't want to misspeak to anyone. You don't want to misrepresent the senator. Exactly.
Because you are representing.
Exactly. So it is a lot of pressure, but in our office we had a lot of support from the staff who are experts and have been working on these issues for a long time, that we can go to and just, hey, I just want to make sure I'm saying this right. Can you just give me a bullet point just so I have something to say?
And I'd only add to that you bring up a good point. People answering the phones are the first line of defense. If I'm in the community, I'm also that first line of defense, but phone calls, that's your person-to-person interaction. One, it's really important for the senator to have a human pick up the phone. Yes. We only let things go to voicemail when the office is closed. It's really important for him. For every caller, he even has a 3-ring rule. So, you put someone on hold so that you can pick the other one up. But being nice to that person when they call, regardless of whatever their opinion is, however they're treating you, community or customer service.
Yes, exactly.
That's a skill that will take you really far in life. Being nice, he's also one of the first people to tell me on the job, when we were staff assistants, don't get paid enough to be yelled at all the time. So if you do have to hang up on someone, that's okay in our office, but to a point. If they're being real jerks, then,
try to work with them and calm them down before you just hang up on them.
Right, but, being nice and understanding that if they're calling a Senate office, usually it's either a last-ditch attempt or they don't know where to go. So usually you can get them some information.
I have a question. Do you agree with all of Bernie's policies?
That's something that was asked in my interview for the job. It was worded a little bit different, but it was my job as a staff assistant to represent the senator. If someone asked me my opinion, would I give it? And the answer is no. It's not my job to represent my opinion. It's my job to represent his. There are things that I disagree with him on. There are few and far between, but I do disagree with him. But it's my job to represent him. So I want to keep my job.
Yeah.
And he also understands that people have the right to discuss about these issues. In fact, he wants people to discuss these issues. So if I disagree with him, he knows that that is an option. You don't have to agree with everyone. So he's also understanding.
Yes, if you're if you're looking at working for an elected official or something, don't let that be a barrier. If you don't agree with them 100%, that doesn't mean you can't work for them and still have a positive experience doing that.
I would say, for me personally, this was in my, when I was preparing for this, part of what I found in kind of jumping around jobs after graduating college was it was really important for me to be engaged in what the job was. So for me, it was important to agree with Bernie on most issues, but that doesn't mean that I couldn't work for someone else that I don't agree with them on everything.
Can you describe your typical day? Both of you.
Yeah. Mine's kind of all over the place. Like today, we're here, we're talking with you, we're going to a senior lunch, we're going to an event at the State House, and then we have a meeting with another advocacy group. And that's as typical as a day on the road can be. I try and be on the road at least 2 days a week and then follow up and get information with people the other 3 days. And so what that looks like is if there's a big issue going on in the state, I didn't personally work on it, but the water contamination in North Bennington and now Pownell, that was something that our office really rallied behind to be informed and is staying informed about. So if something like that comes up, we don't drop everything, but we stay as engaged as possible. So that would be another sort of day for me, reaching out to people to be educated about issues.
Well, and is your job sort of 24/7, or is there a set end time and then you don't have to sort of answer any more phones, or is it now that politics is sort of surrounding us with the election, is it always do you feel like you're at work almost?
I will do my best to describe, to answer that. So our office is open from 8:30 to 5:30, but my job is to be at events, meeting people, and representing the senators. So if I have to be in Brattleboro at 6 p.m. at night, I have to be in Brattleboro at 6 p.m., and I'm not going to leave early because technically, my day has ended. But that doesn't mean I have a phone that I get all of my emails on. I'll answer them if it's late at night and I get it, but if I'm not checking my phone, I don't get penalized or that, that's not. I try and answer them as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll add to that. When there are certain, at least in DC, we have certain sort of periods that we're in session, we call them. So it's when The Senate is in session and they're voting on bills, and the senators are there, and there's actual things taking place. And we have recess periods. We're in one right now. They usually coincide with holidays. Or since it's an election year, we're on recess a lot. So it's when the senators, they're called state work periods also. It's when the senators will go back to their home states and do sort of outreach, like travel around with their outreach staff to different events and meet with their constituents, the people in their state. So when we are in session and bills are moving through and people and senators are there voting, my day changes all the time. But a typical day would be I get in. My hours are like 9 to 6 usually. I'll get in. And a big part of my job is like reading the news and just being really, I think for all of us, just being really up to date on everything that's going on. Through the Senate office will comment on a lot of news stories. So if I see something, I bring it to the attention of the rest of the staff and, should we tell the senator, should we see if he wants to make a statement on it? Should our office follow up with this reporter, see if there's anything we can do? One example that comes to mind, I work on the senator's investigation into rising prescription drug prices. So a lot of times you'll see in New York Times, Washington Post, big periodicals that'll have sort of breaking news stories on this one prescription drug just jumped in price. And it's usually the first time we're hearing about it too. So we'll jump on that, contact the reporter, see their source, and then investigate into that. So a lot of my job is monitoring the news and making sure that we're up to date on everything. And if new reports or studies are released, the senator, in all the speeches he makes, things like that, he likes to refer to facts, to numbers. So another one of my jobs is to keep all of our stats up to date. When he says how many people are uninsured or how many people are living at this level of poverty, we need to make sure those numbers are as up to date as possible. So if there are new reports come out, I'll read through those and summarize those. I work on, so the Senate is made up of different committees that work on different issues. So the senator is a member of several committees, but the one that I work on for him is the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee. It's abbreviated HELP. So they hold different hearings on issues, either issues just for senators to learn about certain things that are going on. I think I'll reference like the Zika virus, if you guys have been hearing about Zika, that the HELP committee held a hearing on it, so they brought in experts from the National Institutes of Health, from the Centers for Disease Control, just to get updates on what's going on with Zika. So there are about 20 members of the committee, different senators, and they will ask questions of these people. So my job is to prepare questions for the senator to ask those people. So I'll do a bunch of research on the people who are testifying at this hearing, get their background, what they know, what questions they should be able to answer, what things are priorities for the senator to know and to learn more about. And there's also, I think besides hearings that those committees hold, committees also hold things that are called markups. And for a bill to get to the Senate floor to be voted on to become law, it needs to go through a committee. So bills that relate to healthcare, for example, will go through the HELP committee. And during that markup event is when senators have the opportunity to discuss the bill or to offer changes or amendments to the bill. So my job is preparing those amendments that we might want to offer up to change the bill to better represent Vermonters' values or the senator's values and things like that. So I spend a lot of my day at a desk typing and researching. And sometimes on the phone, I have meetings over the phone. I'll also like I mentioned, a lot of times different advocacy groups from Vermont or national advocacy groups will come to DC to, if you've heard the word lobby, to lobby Congress on issues that they want to see advanced in the Senate. So I'll meet with those folks. Usually in those meetings, it's one or two staff members from Bernie's office and the advocates, and they'll usually bring materials with them. Say have a list of certain bills or priorities that they'll give us, and then we'll talk through those, and we'll give examples of how Bernie's acted on these things in the past, and if we have any questions about the bills. And and for your question about if your job's like 24 hours, I also have like a phone that I usually monitor throughout the evening. I'll leave the office around 6, or if there's a big hearing or say a big bill moving through that's really important to us and we need to work on a lot, I might stay till 7 or 7:30 some nights. And I'm usually always monitoring my phone to make sure I'm up to date on things. We get a lot of emails, so it's also it's good to stay up to date. Yeah, exactly. It's good to have the work-life balance, and I think our office tries to encourage that balance. But you come into the office in the morning and you have 20 some odd emails you have to work through before you can start your day. It's nice to keep track of them when you're home.
Do you think, especially with the outreach part of your job, that how much do you feel like if someone comes to you with a problem, you can really help change that or impact their life? And does it get frustrating with the whole bureaucratic system and just to how slow it is to make any changes?
I think that's a really good question. I think the process to get help is really, really slow. And if it's something that our office can help with, we do the best we can to speed that up. So going back to the first part, how can we help people? If it's not something our office can help with, I try and get them the resources as soon as possible. And if it's appropriate, I'll call that resource myself to say that, in a really dire circumstance, you're going to get this phone call in. I just want to give you a heads up so that you can be attentive to it as soon as possible. That also being said, if I hear from a lot of people about the same issue that, again, is not something that our office can help with, like a state issue or, anything that our office can't help with, I'll connect with that group that can help, again, to just say, we're getting a lot of these calls. I know I can't influence what you do in any way because that's, again, the separation of local, state, and federal government. But just giving kind of a heads up that we're hearing about this a lot. And a lot is even if 4 or 5 Vermonters contact us and they're in a really tough spot, we'll want to make sure that people know about that. Does that answer that?
Yeah.
All right.
Do you think your job has been more demanding now that Bernie's running for president than when he wasn't, maybe a couple of years ago?
I would say it's different. When he wasn't running for president, it was just a different job. We had to keep him directly informed, which we still do now, but in different avenues. But with him running for president, he's in the news a lot more. So our staff assistants get a ton. Our staff assistants get a lot more phone calls, and because there are very strict rules about how his Senate office cannot be involved with his campaign. We have to learn those. If someone's calling about his campaign, we need to get them to that resource. As soon as donations or contributions are mentioned, we have to kind of stop all things. And like I was saying before, if that's mentioned and it's my job to if that's mentioned by a Vermonter and it's my job to work with Vermonters, that becomes a little challenging. So and not challenging in any way, just challenging that it's new and that I have to navigate we can't talk about that. We're going to have to contact someone else. But, like, let's still have a conversation about the senator, even though we just were. So it's just new, different, and if we mess up, it messes up his campaign. So we don't want that either.
So I know you were saying before how when you're needed at an event, you have to be there. Can you describe how that has an effect on, like, your personal life?
Oh. Yeah. In getting this job, that was part of it. You know, they said it's not a 9-to-5 job. It's, you know, you're needed when you're needed. You'll have to work some weekends. And we have an outreach team of 5 people. So if something came up like on a Saturday night and I had personal plans that night that I either couldn't or strongly didn't want to cancel, we have 4 other outreach staffers. So we all work really closely together. We know that we cover different issues, but we all have to be knowledgeable about all of the issues Bernie talks about. So if I couldn't go, usually someone would step up knowing that I would do the same in the future.
When you go to like an event or something, it seems like a big part of your job is like networking sort of situations. What do you think are like the best skills to have for like good communications and networking and stuff?
A boss that everyone likes.
Makes it easier.
I think that we're really lucky in Vermont with our congressional delegation. So when you go to an event, there's not a lot of people that disagree with what he's doing. So in networking, you have to, I've said this a couple of times now, but you just have to be nice. People disagree, but you know, community is a big part of Vermont, so making sure people have the right resources. You might have to make friends with people that aren't exactly aligned with the senator. I think that being outgoing is helpful. One of the things that Rachel passed along was, you know, how did your experience in high school help you for this? I did a whole bunch of things at Harwood, including like the musical. And so like being on a stage in front of people did help me out, regardless of if you couldn't see them or you were reciting lines or who knows what, but it did help me be able to speak better in a group setting. So other skills, I think I'll say what was really hard for me. When I got this job, I didn't meet with these groups yet. You know, and the person who had it before me was already gone, so there was no sort of introduction phase. So it was really hard for me to go to, you know, big meetings at the State House and know no one there. So when you step into the room and you're like I would just start with like, what brings you to this event? Or like trying to do something. And I like psych myself up in the car, like this is my job to talk to these people, so don't just stand there and then read a letter and then leave. Like, it's your job to be connected with them. So even though I felt awkward or embarrassed, I made sure that, you know, I gave myself a little pep talk before so that I did my job and talk to people, because that was a really hard part, to walk in and know that you know no one and they're in their own groups talking with each other and you'd have to, you know, be included somehow. But you overcome, because, again, I want to keep my job. But I'm sure you have something to...
Well, yeah, so I talked about how I go to a lot of briefings, like meetings with other advocacy groups or even other staff from different senators' offices. I work closely with a lot of other staff members. And as I'm sure you know, not everyone agrees with Bernie. It's nice, like what Kat said, you know, when we meet with advocates from Vermont that come to DC, our meetings are usually pretty enjoyable because everyone likes the delegation. Everyone's sort of on the same page. All 3 of our members of Congress are pretty much on the same page on things, and we work really closely with Senator Leahy's staff and Congressman Welch's staff also, which is really nice. But yeah, I think just trying to find common ground with folks. When we're working on like different bills with other senators' offices, we usually don't agree on the way that something should be changed. But if we can agree on one portion of it, hey, let's get that in there. Let's work on this together. I know we don't agree on the whole picture, but especially in the current environment, getting small things passed is what we're really working towards. I know Bernie, obviously, he calls for, a revolution and the gold standard for these changes in healthcare and education, things like that. And unfortunately, right now, at least at the Senate level, it's really hard for us to attain those goals. So if we can try to find some common ground with people and just work on a small change for now, eventually all those small changes will build up to something bigger.
Or he can just implement it from the top. That would be better.
Jackson?
You say you have to stay current with the news a lot. How do you make sure the news that you're receiving is as unbiased as possible?
That's a really good question. You may know that Senator does criticize the corporate media a lot. That a lot of our media outlets are owned by larger corporations, and I think my solution for that is just getting information from as many sources as possible. We have some trusted sort of bigger publications that we can be pretty sure are reporting accurately. But I just try to go to, a dozen or more different sites or look at a bunch of different magazines and newspapers. And if they're, reoccurring themes, if they're all saying around the same thing, then okay, that's probably true. And because I've been in this position for about a year, I also go to my supervisor or other people in the office and just make sure that the source I'm using, for example, is trustworthy and say a source we've used in the past or, contact. We have a lot of folks that we work with outside of the Senate, say in DC, that work in different organizations that are experts on certain issues. So if we're not quite sure, I read this stat in this New York Times article, and I'm just not really sure if that's quite right. Can you help me work through it or find the actual source for it? I can reach out to the experts that have been working on it for 10 plus years and make sure that I have the whole picture and all the information I need. So we're definitely very aware that you should definitely try to find something in at least 3 places before you go give it to the senator and say, hey, this is what you should say when you're on TV next week. So.
Have you ever encountered corruption in your job?
Getting any bribes?
In that way, no. There's a again, I'm talking about more rules, but there are rules against receiving gifts of any sort, and I think it's like capped at $49.
$49.99 or something. Yeah, anything more than that we cannot accept because it could be seen as a bribe.
Yeah, you can still get a lot. No,
yeah.
Our office is pretty good at sending stuff back if we get anything.
Yeah.
Just because that is.
What do you typically get? And probably not that often, I'm guessing.
No, we get things few and far between. And if it's something like, if it's directly if it's like a gift thanking our office for something that the senator did, that's something that we'd have to return.
Really?
Because it's our job, it's the senator's responsibility to work on behalf of Vermonters.
Right,
I mean, the casework, outreach work that we do, it's just what we're supposed to do. It's our responsibility. Yeah. We aren't expecting, we shouldn't receive anything in return because it's what we're supposed to be doing.
Every once in a while we'll get something like a perishable item in the mail, and that so if we get something like that or flowers, we have to put them out in our lobby for everyone to enjoy, because we're doing work for Vermonters, so any Vermonter that comes into our office should be able to enjoy that too.
Enjoy the cheese.
Yeah, if we get.
I was thinking habit.
Yeah. Or we'll get like Lake Champlain chocolates or something, and we just have to put them out for everyone.
But as for like bigger corruption, working in Vermont, I can't really see that much. And I don't work in state government here, and then I don't directly work in legislation in DC, so I think I'm a person who's really not in the know to see this corruption.
Yeah, I have definitely not seen anything in our office, but I know from working with other staff from other senators' offices, I don't know if corruption would be the right word. It seems really intense, maybe just people having issues with, the power structure in their office. Maybe their chief of staff, who is like the head of all the staff for the senator, they think, they're kind of abusing their power or doing something that's inappropriate. That definitely exists, and I mean the senator would say the amount of money in politics is just corruption anyway. So I know if I have friends and their bosses, the senators they work for, or say receive donations from a certain big company, and that's how they shape their views, they would view that as corruption. But in my job, I haven't had to deal with that.
What were you guys focusing on, if anything, in high school? Did you know you were going to do this? And then maybe college, I guess, if you went to college. Yeah, you both did.
My answer would be no, I didn't know I was going to do this. What did I focus on here? I don't know. I hope you guys still have it. I took 3 democracies.
Yeah.
You guys have that class?
I wish I did.
And when I was here, I was taught by Mr. Dean, who I think also retired the year I graduated. And that was really meaningful to me to look at, democracies in history and how they were influenced, and how a long time ago people's voice still mattered. And while I don't think I looked at it in a political way per se, but I did know that my choice and my opinion matters. So from there, I don't think I was ever a full-blown activist, but I was never scared to speak my mind about issues. And when I got, so that office job that I had, it was really at a place that I just wasn't passionate about what they were doing. They were doing great things, but it was just something that I wasn't totally connected with. And that's when I realized it's you don't need to sit in a place all day and not like really anything that you're doing. It could be, totally fine work. You're not being treated poorly, but you could like what you're doing. And that's when I was kind of I need to do something that I enjoy, and that's how I kind of bounced to here.
I think I did not know even in college, this wasn't my goal, wasn't my dream job. I didn't really have one. And I went to Colchester High School, and I helped start our environmental club there. So like what Kat said, I knew that my voice mattered and I wanted it to be heard. And I was very passionate, still am, about environmental issues, and that's what I was most interested in at that time. So I saw that there was a need at our school for this kind of club for people who had a similar interest. So that was probably my first experience in advocacy and sort of thinking about how to make political change. But I wanted to do it. I studied global studies at UVM, and I wanted to do it on an international level. And maybe I still do. I don't know. I'm still pretty early on in my career. But I think I also was in our drama club. I was on stage, and I think that helped me sort of find my confidence and figure out that I did like working with other people, and I liked being heard. And because I grew up in Vermont and I went to school in Vermont, I I wanted to move out of Vermont. I wanted to see what else was out there, but I still wanted to be connected. And I was really fascinated by DC just as a place, from the politics and also the advocacy, and in DC, there's a lot of young professionals, and everyone is really driven, and that can be challenging because everyone is sort of fighting for their own success, but it can be also really inspiring. So I just really liked DC in general, but missed Vermont. So working in Bernie's office was a great way for me to still feel connected to my home while getting to experience this really different place than I had known growing up.
I have a question that tails off that last one. Did you decide to intern at Bernie's office because you liked Bernie and knew about him previously, or did you just need a job in that area?
It was because I liked Bernie and I love Vermont, and he really represents what I think we should all be working towards. He also offers paid internships, which is not that common. You may find once you reach college, it's often hard to find them. And for me personally, that's if I was to move to DC and do something, I couldn't be accepting an unpaid internship. But I think that just goes into Bernie's values, and that they really aligned with mine. In discussing why he offers paid internships, it's really to broaden the pool of applicants. I mean, you're going to get a lot more diverse people working in your office if you're offering them. If you're offering unpaid internships, you're really going to get the top 10% of kids whose parents they can afford to just pay for them to live in this pretty expensive city and do work for free. And it also, encourages you to work a lot harder, I think, and we're given a lot more responsibilities. And it's a smaller pool, so I was surrounded by people in my internship who had accomplished a lot already and had some really great skills, and I learned a lot from them. But I think a lot of people, the Hill is what people call Capitol Hill, and a lot of people strive to work there. And some are I just want to get on the Hill, I just want to work for a congressman, that's all I want, I don't care who I'm working for. That's fine, but that is not what I wanted. Yeah, so I don't think I'd be comfortable working for someone who, say, I didn't share most of their views, or I didn't feel a connection to.
So you enjoy the job itself and working for Bernie rather than just you like sharing those ideas with other people rather than just the job itself? Yeah,
exactly. It's much more to me than just the job and just a path for my ultimate goal. So it just depends on what you want, and that's what my job is for me.
Yeah, so Katarina, you mentioned that out of college you struggled to find a job that related to your major. Do you think generally, typically, with political science majors with an interest in politics, do you think that it's difficult to find a job in that field?
I would say in Vermont, yes. I wanted to stay in the state, and I didn't know exactly how to go about that. When I graduated with a degree in political science and knowing that I wasn't able to afford med school, I got, a lot of places aren't really requesting a degree in political science. So I was a little discouraged in that I had paid a lot of money for 4 years of school, and for a degree that I won't say didn't mean anything. It meant a lot to me, but it didn't really prepare me for an entry-level position anywhere, or in places that I wanted to work. So I would say I'm sure maybe if I traveled to DC, I know that the job market there is also very competitive, but if I traveled somewhere that had maybe more competitive but more options, I could have found something in my degree after college, but I didn't do that. So I figured out a way to pay student loans and then got a job in my field, and that's really exciting to me.
How many years of work experience have you, and if you've talked about this with your colleagues, sort of had to go through before you can really settle down in a job? Or not even settle down, but just sort of have the jobs that you have now?
I still feel like I'm new, and I've been doing I've been working in this office for 3 years and in this job for a year and a half, which is still, not a ton of time. So I don't know the answer to that. We had people recently retire from our office who had been working for the senator since he was a mayor. So there's one who graduated who had been working for him for 30 years, and she even made comments like, not until 10 years ago did I feel like I really had a grasp on like some of these issues. So I think it takes longer than you think. And I have plenty of people or friends, relatives tell me like, millennials want everything handed to them. We don't want everything handled to us. I think that we want to work hard for it, but there are fewer options. And it's not the same world that the people who are saying that that they were growing up in. So I would just say, you need to put your time in. You need to work hard. You will find opportunities available to you. It just might take a little bit longer than you had originally thought.
Thank you.
And you also are likely to move around, like change jobs fairly often. Thinking, when I was looking at the DC job market and talking to some mentors I had who were familiar with it, people my age and my education level often move jobs every 2 years, 2 to 4 years, something like that. I mean, in my position, I work with a lot of people who will move back and forth from Senate offices. Say they work in a Senate office for 2 to 4 years, then they go work in a different sector, say for a government agency, or they go work for a nonprofit, and they come back, and they go back, and it's all just back and forth. So I think don't get too stressed out thinking about, okay, what's the job I'm going to be in for 30, 40 years, because you're going to move around quite a bit, and you're not stuck in one place when you find it.
Speaking of that, do you guys think you're going to stay in the political sector kind of thing? Is it right for you?
I don't know. I am looking forward to going back to school eventually to get a master's degree. I'm not quite sure what in, but I think I really enjoy my job now, and I want to be in it as long as I can continue to grow in my position. But for my current job, I think I still have a lot of room to grow in my position, but then after that, usually at least in DC and in the field I'm in, a higher degree will probably be required of me to move to the next level, working on more advanced things. That's just how things are now. What Kat was saying, our parents didn't experience that. They didn't necessarily need a higher degree to keep moving up, but I think a master's degree is pretty common now. It's like the new bachelor's is what they're saying. So. Well,
that's what Bernie's talking about, right? About how the college degree is the old high school, and that kind of sucks. Because I was looking at Bernie's. But he went to school in Chicago for political science and has a bachelor's in that, right? That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I wish that were the case. I could go and be senator with a bachelor's degree, but sounds like not. No.
Yeah, I think I'd like to continue working sort of in this environment, this atmosphere. I think I'll always feel the need to be connected to politics and trying to make political change, whatever. But that can be done through many avenues. It doesn't have to be done working for an elected official. You can be working for an advocacy organization, working in a different branch of government. I mean, so much change now happens at the state level and the local level. Like I'm very open to, working at even the city level and being on a city council or working at the state level. I think that's a really good option.
Another follow-up. Do you think more change can get done? I know it's a loaded general question, but do you think more change can happen if people were more involved in government and politics and creating change? Or, I mean, there's a lot of great things in private companies that have happened. So I've been kind of flip-flopping you can go straight into a business that is advocating all these great things and helping people and stuff like that, or you can go to government and try to affect change that way, maybe slowly or whatever. What do you think would...
That's a really good question. And I think it depends what's important to you, because like you said, I mean, there are private companies that are making great change and are doing great things for people. So if you find a place like that really, represents, your values and what you want to do and your interests and is fulfilling, then that's great. I mean, there's definitely a role for that. I mean, the senator would agree also. He doesn't want to squash out all private businesses. He definitely realizes that there's an important role they play in, innovation and technology, and just you need that balance and that public-private partnership that is really, really positive. I think for me, I see myself more in the public sector, but that's just because that's pretty much all I've known. So it's hard.
We maybe have time for one more question. I want to make sure that if you have lunch that you can get there. Does anybody have maybe one more follow-up question? Go ahead.
Are there any internship possibilities for high schoolers this summer, coming the spring?
I think, and I'm being completely honest, we have gotten so many applications that often we look at people who are in college. We have not totally crossed out the opportunity of having a high schooler. But I will be honest in saying most of our interns are college students or recent grads. But Rachel has had someone come into our office and shadow for a day. And I know that's not the same thing as an internship, but still an opportunity to see how we work.
We've had a couple interns in DC who have sort of taken a gap year between their senior year of high school and graduating from high school and their first year of college. So that, I mean, if you're a senior and interested in doing that, I'm not sure that, I've never spoken to someone after the experience if they thought that was a good experience, but we have had folks fresh out of high school intern in our office. They've been great.
And you're both on this, not the campaign aspect, but can you speak as to the volunteer things in the campaign for...
I think they are there.
Right. I mean, yes, they're obviously there.
I don't know.
Long term.
I think, and this is just from our knowledge of being, having to be informed about it. I think there'll be volunteers open for as long as the campaign lasts. So, yeah.
Yeah, I know it's a long time.
Yeah.
So maybe. If we could just end with maybe a few words of advice for our students, and then we'll kind of wrap up from there. If you guys have any lasting words of advice.
One thing I think that I did not do in high school is keep in touch with your teachers here. And throughout education and throughout every job you have, keep in touch with your supervisors and your mentors, and doesn't have to be, constant contact, but every couple months, shoot them an email and just update them. Hey, I'm doing this, and ask them how they're doing and anything new that they're working on that they think you'd be interested in, or And it works, I mean, if you need reference for a job or something, then you have those people on hand, and also they just have, great knowledge and skills to help you out as you figure out what you want to do.
I would agree with that. I think that I wasn't good at that, and so now that I know that you need to do that, staying in contact now, but you guys are also teenagers, so if you go back to your high school teacher, I think that shows a lot too. So if you guys go to college and then you realize you had a really great experience in a class and you didn't really appreciate it at the time, I think your teacher would still love for you to reach out to them. So even if
it was on NPR the other day, or actually yesterday, they're talking about people reaching back to teachers and how amazing if the teachers felt or whatever.
Yeah, say your class really prepared me for this college class I'm taking.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
There's probably nothing better to hear as a teacher.
And then when I was in college, I actually went, because I was at UVM, I just went back to Colchester and I talked to students who were seniors and preparing for college just as a college freshman. I did that just to, the initial, this is what it's like just kind of let you know. So that's, a good up if you feel like doing that once you hit that stage, going back and just keeping in touch with people, I think is
my only other tidbit of advice is try new things. Mm-hmm. You might have no idea what you really like. And if I found by kind of bouncing around a couple of jobs in 2 years that there are things that I want in a job, there are things that you need in a job. And with that, the interview process for a job is just as much for you as it is for them. So be prepared, and you'll learn this over time, but be prepared with what you want to get out of the job, because if you don't learn that, it's not going to be a good fit for you either.
Awesome. Well, can everybody join me in just giving a round of applause?